All right, welcome back. So it's time to start learning about the Swift programming language. So we've kind of got a pretty long unit, to be honest, of learning the different language features, and we're going to be doing it with a tool called Swift Playground. So it's kind of a lightweight way to have something that's like just code, which is going to be great for what we're trying to do, which is learning the Swift language. By the end of this unit, you should be very comfortable with Swift. You should kind of understand some of the flow control, strings, variables, things like that. We'll also look at some of the newer programming features, tuples, which existed in Python, closures, some more things you can do with enums. We'll also learn about classes and some things you can do there. We'll kind of finish this unit making the model object for a tic-tac-toe game. So you can kind of see there's a UI here, but we're not going to do anything with UIs here. We're just making a model object for this, and then there'll be a lab where you make one for a lights out project. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to kind of be following along with some of these links. Sorry, the font had to be really small here. These are the Apple guide to learning Swift. And so you should hopefully be reading through this guide. So there's a language guide, and you can see that there's different things. And really all we're doing today, or in this unit, is we're just kind of getting some practice with these things. Just because when you read something, you're always like, yeah, that makes sense. I definitely get it. No big deal. And then like you kind of forget it. But if you type something, you kind of get more engaged. Hopefully you'll feel more comfortable with some of these things. There's also, the best way to learn is there's a guided tour. That was actually one of the first sections in this. And the guided tour you can read via this website. There's also this like playground you can download, which has the same text. I recommend you do it with that playground. So if you're watching this video and you haven't looked at least some of that, you might want to look at that. There's also a very lengthy, like 300 plus page iBook about learning the Swift language, and another one about using about Cocoa Touch. So those are also great, but they're kind of long. What we're going to do is we're going to work through different examples, and we've actually got a little bit of starting code for you. So if you follow the link to this GitHub project, it'll take you to a Swift Playgrounds like starting code. Most of the starting code is empty, but it'll give you a place to put things. I recommend you just go ahead and click on download zip and download it to the place of your choosing. Once you've got it downloaded, you'll just go ahead and have to unzip it. And then once you unzip it, there should be a couple folders in here. There's some solutions that you can just look at. There's the lights out lab, which we'll do later. But where we're going to spend almost all of our time is in the follow along section. So you can see that in general, I've gone ahead and made a playground for you. But just because I want you to make sure you're comfortable making a playground, the first one we're going to do in this video is called Basics. And that playground doesn't exist yet, so you're going to have to actually make it. So go ahead and open up Xcode. If you've got a screen that looks like this, you can actually click on Getting Started with Playground. If you don't, you can go under File, New, Playground. Either way is fine with me. You should get presented with a window that looks like this. And the first thing we're going to do in this video is we're just going to make a playground called Basics. And where I want you to save it is I want you to save it into that Follow Alongs folder. So here I'm going to save it into this Follow Alongs folder. Oh, also, after you finish saving it, go back and rename the Swift Playgrounds master and just take off the word master, right? There's no reason for that hyphen master to be on there. I just want to put this one into Follow Alongs. If you haven't used Playgrounds before, they're pretty simple. So they've got this added feature of they actually like show you the code live on the right. Technically what they're doing is they're running a server. Once it detects a change, it's recompiling and rerunning your code. Usually pretty effectively. I have had Playgrounds crash on me some, and I've had to do some things. You'll also notice they've done some things for you, like they've imported UIKit. Usually when you do a project, you'll have UIKit available to you, so it's just there. Sometimes I'm going to choose to delete it just to kind of show when it's necessary and when it's not. They've also got a comment at the top, which I've never really found useful. And then a string. I mean, you could make a string if you wanted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just kind of a blank slate, and I'm just going to do a couple things. The first thing I'll do is I'll make a variable, and you can see its output over on the right. If it's a variable, you can, of course, change the values. If you were to make something a constant, though, you'd use the keyword let. So if you say let and then some name equals 42, if you tried to change a constant, you would get what you deserve, right? So it would of course say cannot assign value to a constant that's already been established. So that's one thing that's kind of as far as the basics. So you can see that in Swift they want you to use a lot of constants, so they make it very easy for you to choose between variables and constants. You'll be surprised how often you choose to use constants. The next question is, what type of variable is my variable? It turns out that Swift is strongly typed, and it actually just assumed a type based on what it saw on the right-hand side. If, however, you wanted to specify the type, you use a colon, and then you say what type it is. So this one is an int. You'll also notice with Swift, there's no more of this primitives and objects that most languages have. Everything is kind of the same. Everything is an object, right? And note that since it's a number, you could specify that it's something different. It assumed int by default, but here if you wanted to make it a double, you can see that it prints doubles on the right that are different. Typically, though, you don't need to include the type. You can leave it in there, it's fine. But it will infer, like most of the time, and figure out what something is. Next up, we're just going to play with arrays and just kind of some different flow controls. So if I wanted to make an array, the syntax is pretty clean, right? So I'm going to choose to make this one a constant, so I'm not going to change it. I'm going to call it scores, and I'm going to give it these values. And then what I'd really like to do is I'd just like to iterate over these scores and see how many are passing, which is 60% or greater, and then how many are failing, so like, less than 60. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and make a variable called total passing, set it to 0, and I'm just going to loop over these values. There's a couple different ways that you could do loops, but the one that's the most common is the enhanced for loop. So we just say for score in scores, so we're looping over all the things in the scores, and we're pulling the score out. If you wanted to, you can still use kind of the older, like, for I going from I equals 0 up to I equals, count, or just under that. But the enhanced for loop is preferred, and you can use it most of the time. Then if we wanted to make an if statement, we'll just say if the score is greater than or equal to 60, then what we want to do is we want to take total passing and increment it. So you can see right away that it ran this line 4 times. So I could already tell you that the answer is 4, right? So there are 4 passing scores. So the 75, the 93, the 87, the 83. If I wanted to print out the variable, I could also just list it on its own line. These are just kind of some of the basics of Playgrounds. You could also use print lines. And so if I wanted to, I could actually use string interpolation to do some printing inside of these games. So if I wanted to say total passing passed out of scores.count, that's the way you get the length, students, then I could see what that would print for me as well. So it looks like it says 4 passed out of 6 students. Mine wrapped here just because I didn't have enough space. Yours will probably be all in one line. So this is just kind of some basics, a little intro to Swift, just so you kind of see what variables look like. Here's a quickie little array, and then some flow control with ifs and fors. It's things you're pretty familiar with, and then also this feature of how it displays over on the right. So that's it for the basics. What we're going to do next time is we're going to come back and we're just going to kind of like pick a topic, and we're going to show you some details about that topic. All right, see you next time. Bye.